I'll be on my best behavior.
I insist that you don't. Yes, because then I'm not getting the real you, and I'm getting the pretend you.
Okay.
That's it. So we're recording. The light is there. I confirm I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you. Very much appreciate this. Well, the first time I reached out to you, something happens that took priority first. And
Yeah.
like,
Well, it occurred to me that either you're flaky or you actually have something going on.
usually one of the two.
Yeah, it's usually one of the two.
It's usually one of the two.
Yeah.
So I had something going on.
Yeah.
And in my experience, many people, like it might, like it wasn't an emergency, but it was something that if I did not give it my focus, it would have taken me a lot longer to fix.
Yeah.
And if I just prioritized it there and then. And many people in the past that I've spoken to, they make themselves so important that they go, "You're wasting my time." The circles around them are very, very small.
It occurred to me that I could go there.
I believe you. Yes, I believe you. I would like to thank you for not doing it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay, so the reason for this is I'm working on a project currently to do with self-knowledge and self-understanding. Okay, primarily to do with how we understand ourselves and why it's important, and as a subconscious text to find an easy, clear, simple way to help individuals see the difference between looking at something subjectively and looking at something objectively.
Got it. Yeah. I draw on a very big pool of knowledge that exists independent of me too.
Hi, my name is Marcel. I'd like to thank you for watching this video. These interviews are parts of a whole series. So if you would like to continue to watch these, don't forget to subscribe and click on the little bell to get the notifications. Drop me a comment. Tell me what you think about this. And if you have any questions, certainly that would be the way to get the message across to me. I hope you enjoy this. Take care.
So if it's true, then in a way it's your content too. Somewhere within you have access to that content too. So it's not my content. There's an ocean of answers that is not in our head, but it's accessible to the heart. Which
brings me to the second reason.
Okay.
I decided to reach out to you. Because I could hear that you stopped thinking that you know a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which for me is also something. I haven't met a lot of people who have reached that. Most people think they know. Very few people realize that the more they know, the less there is actually. There's more. So let's us start. Right.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to ask you, how do you see the difference between easy and simple?
Easy and simple?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes simple is really hard because we've been trained to be so complicated. Easy is convenience. Simple is probably closer to truth. And I say to people, whenever you hear the word convenient, run like hell. Because convenience weakens you and challenge builds you. And all the things you don't like to do because they're too challenging. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Those are the things that broaden your experience and deepen your experience and bring you learning and bring you wisdom. And the earlier you have your hardships, the more resilient you will be in all of your life. The easier is your childhood, often the harder is your later life, because you don't learn that resilience.
What you just said right now, I'm gonna quote that as a direct paraphrase from your words. The earlier you experience your hardships, it is magnificently true. I grew up with the same triggers to this empty, dark space that is created through trauma and environmental experience, and all these things. Usually, like a video, the content is different, but the emotional triggers come from the same source. So in South Africa, I grew up in apartheid, things like that, very similar to you, but my trauma started roughly the same time as you.
So you were like 9 when apartheid ended, right?
I was 9 when it ended, but before that, I was making bullets and hand grenades on cultural advice of this is what you do when you're a white Boer.
Yeah, this is when you're a white boy in Africa.
Cultural, it's like that stuck literally.
Yeah.
I could shoot before.
Are you Dutch? Are you Dutch background?
Yeah.
Dutch background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dutch background.
Yeah.
And like literally, army trained before I was in primary school. Literally, how to use a gun, how to use a handgun, how to find water, how to build a shelter.
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. So that has an immense influence.
Yeah.
And then my father was a raging alcoholic as well, which is then at some stage I stood up against that as well. And it's perfect what you're saying. The earlier we experience this, I would actually add one point. We experience it very early, but it creates this T-junction in the possibilities we can choose. If we go left, it will destroy us inevitably because we're going to fight against it. If we go the other direction, it will open doors to understanding and ultimately being compassionate, like what we are now, realizing, listen, that person who, pardon my French, fucking did that and that and that and that with me, they probably had a harder time in life. And that's the result of it.
Yeah.
So we end up seeing the dots.
Yeah, my childhood was pretty tough. And my father and I didn't get along. And one day I realized, I was just sitting on a porch and just hanging out, and realized that he went through the First World War as a child, then the Bolshevik Revolution, then the Depression, and then the Second World War. And he was in Latvia. And he was in all of that. And it occurred to me, if I had gone through what he went through, I would have turned out to be just about as much of a prick as he was. And at that point, all my animosity against him just dropped. So, okay, I get it.
Yeah, that's exactly what.
Because the environment influences us in very powerful ways. And
massively. And even now, like my own work, like I specialize in dealing with trauma with people, recognizing specifically subconscious trauma memories and dealing with them. This whole how we have been trained to become good tax-paying citizens since the Industrial Revolution, it's really done its damage. And the worst thing for me is everybody thinks that there's someone is in control of all of this and it's their fault and it's their fault and it's their fault. But this is a beast with no leader at all.
Yeah, because we're disconnected from life.
Correct.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. We're born masters. The master lives inside of every human being. But you have to go past your thinking, past your emotions, deeper inside, past your body, to become the energy that you are, that owns and runs the body.
Exactly. Learn how to be first.
And in our training, we're taken away from that. And heartache is the result. And heartache is the call to come home to that energy, to that master, to that life that in our essence, each of us is. And then when you talk about trauma, there's the interaction that's traumatic that you have to sort out and deal with and process, and maybe cry your tears or stomp your pillows or whatever it is that you do to express that, because sometimes people suppress it. So there's that part, but the more, maybe in some ways the more important part is, how do you get from living by a memory of trauma to live it, getting back to life which was not traumatized? The energy that keeps you alive cannot be traumatized. And to get back in touch with that, and then to reposition our life to live from life for life, instead of living from a memory of trauma into the world.
Learning to be alive.
Yeah, or remember it.
Exactly.
Relearning, right? Because it's there. Like the solution is already inside of us. And that's really where the hope is. Because no matter what happened and what you've been through and what went on, something in you was not affected. Neither your awareness, nor your life energy, nor the shine of that energy, which I call inspiration. Those were not affected. Your focus of attention went somewhere else. And that's why you don't experience them, because your focus went somewhere else. So you need to bring the focus back, and that's where the stillness practice is so important. Right?
I know.
Yeah.
Da Vinci said that simple is the clearest way of describing the most complicated process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I've heard that I think maybe it might have been Einstein said, if you can't explain something simply, it means you don't actually understand it.
Okay. It's really, really true.
Yeah.
Because God damn it, we take shortcuts with everything. And then we wonder, why do we keep getting the same result?
End up in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Took a shortcut.
Literally.
Yeah, and you ended up on the dump.
There you go. Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So that sets a very good tone, right, for the starts of this.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, to distinguish that there's a very big fundamental difference between easy and simple. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I am quite curious to hear you articulate, how do you explain the difference between looking at something subjectively and looking at something objectively?
Okay, I think it's probably best illustrated by the difference between science and mysticism. Science looks at the outside of everything. So we've learned through science that light has some properties, but seeing the light is not the same as being the light. Seeing the light is objective, although nothing is completely objective, because there's observer effects that, just the fact that you're looking at it changes it. And what assumptions you bring into your observation will also distort the nature of things, your impression of the nature of things. Being the light, you have to go into your own nature. So being the light is very different from seeing the light. Seeing the light is objective, being the light is subjective. How does how does light experience itself? That would be the subjective question about light. We don't ask that question in science. We look at the fact that it travels 186,000 miles a second and takes 9 minutes from the sun to the earth and is trapped by green leaves and stored in bonds between atoms and molecules. And that we break down those molecules and that energy is released, and that energy is our life. But that still does not give us an experience of what is life. And one is, and awareness is required for both of them, right? The ability to focus. So the other way to say it is objective is when you focus outside, and subjective is when you focus inside. Right? Objective is when you look at symptoms. Subjective is when you look behind causes. But subjective doesn't begin until you let go of your thoughts and let go of your emotions and let go of your body and let go of what you can let go of until you can't let go of anything anymore. Because then you're in your being.
Yeah. So I have a different experience of those two conceptual understandings.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I would love to hear your opinion about it.
What?
In my experience,
mm-hmm.
So it's true what you say. Objective can never be truly objective because of our design limitations, our sensory perception design limitations. All right. And the observer effect, yes, quantum physics is called the Zeno effect. Even if you put a camera on a particle that's going a specific way, it changes just because something is observing it,
Yeah.
like literally. So we work like that. So in my understanding, and I'm totally open for adding information to this, right, especially from this source. Subjective is explaining and experiencing something pertaining specifically to how it makes me feel, my understanding of that experience based on how it triggered me and everything that constitutes this individual being. So I might be in the woods and it might be really cold and I see a tree and somebody quickly asks me and I go, what is that? I said, no, that's wood. That's fuel for tonight's fire. Objectively, then I understand as drawing a circle around that tree completely like this. And based on my own sensual perception, understanding, science included, looking at every single point of view of what that possibly can be, what my senses allow me to actually perceive in that circle. So it's
You're saying that would be subjective?
That's objective.
That's still objective, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So bird's eye view in an essence. One is looking down like this and seeing the whole schema. And the other one is looking out of our senses quite literally,
mm-hmm.
because it influences me. Okay. That's true. Yeah.
But it's an experience. It's experiential. This is like mystical experience.
Exactly. Like seeing how everything is
connected. Yeah. In Ayurvedic medicine, in the old days, not these days, it's been bastardized quite a bit. But in the old days, every person who studied Ayurvedic medicine had to learn how to become completely still, because only in complete stillness, when somebody comes to you, are you free of interfering observations and are able to diagnose accurately. Because otherwise, if you're not still, then your shit gets mixed up with their shit. And then if you're not aware enough to know what's your shit, which you only do when you can get out of your shit, then you can't do good diagnosis, and then you can't do good healing.
This is exactly why I'm having this conversation, because one big thing with this book that I'm working on, right, is finding the easiest words to describe these universal concepts and understandings. Right, so I can clearly, and this was a beautiful example because both of us understand the same thing, that we use completely different words to describe it, because our libraries are built in different ways. So based on this same thing, right, I would like to actually sit down and and try and find a common terminologically understanding for the same thing. So when you say reach a place of complete stillness because otherwise one is not able to do it, I would put in that placeholder an objective diagnosis taken into consideration. Then if in that placeholder was subjective, it can also be described as, if you're not doing it from a place of complete stillness, you have to go through what you think is wrong with the individual first before you can actually see what is wrong with them, because then you have to go through your own opinions.
Yeah, because your thinking is
exactly.
all filters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this
I used to argue with my philosophy of science professor when I was at university, and he said you can't be objective about yourself. And I said, no, it must be possible to be objective about yourself. Can't be objective about what's subjective. So I would say, sorry. So I would say to him, so what is objective? What is objectivity? So he would say, well, objectivity is an attitude. So I say, well, can you learn that attitude? He said, yes. So I said, well, if you've learned the attitude, then you should be able to point that attitude this way and this way too. So you should be able to be objective about yourself, about what is subjective. And it would drive him crazy because he had no answer for it, but he wouldn't let go of the idea that you can't be objective about yourself.
But of course he wouldn't, because that means he would have had to, first of all, acknowledge.
Yeah, of course.
His training,
Yeah.
left, and then start the whole process of re-educating and incorporating.
Yeah.
Most people try and avoid like a really bad car crash.
So, and I had a lot of fun driving him nuts.
For me, all of this is about asking questions, quite literally,
Yeah, it's a good question.
Asking questions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In your own opinion, Mr. Erasmus, what is the hardest, to change or to stay the same?
Well, again, there's so many ways to go on that. People say when not changing is more painful than changing, people change. But the other way to look at it is when you're inspired, change is easy. So you're drawn by the carrot instead of driven by a stick. And change from inspiration, because you get really excited about something. Change from inspiration is more long lasting than change from pain, because when you change from pain, when the pain is gone, you stop. And when you change from inspiration, you're not looking about getting away from the crisis. You're actually going towards the possibility. That's why it's more long lasting. But the other way to look at it is if you look at it from life's perspective. According to life, you're changing all the time. In fact, 98% of the atoms in your body are removed and replaced every year. and some of them many times over in the course of a year. Like your lining of your intestine changes every 4 days, right? Your liver every 8 weeks or 3 months, your blood cells every 4 months, right? Different parts of the body at different rates. But everything is changed. 98% is changed, in a year, is completely redone. So you're changing all the time, whether you want to change or not, from that perspective. And then in the outside world, everything changes. Somebody told me once, everything that can change will, and the only thing that won't change is what can't. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, right? So everything is changing, and if you resist it, you get dragged kicking and screaming. And if you're relaxed, you change with the changes that are changeable. And if you're really relaxed, then you're constant in a place inside while you're taking the ride through the changes. And then it's fun.
Exactly. You become an objective observer, is what I call it.
Yeah. Ultimately, if you want to get the truth to people, you have to sit them still and have them go inside into their own stillness.
So you know that, and I know that, but what about the people who don't know that?
Well,
just saying that sentence to them.
That's what you have to tell them.
You can't make them. What do you mean? Yeah.
And then the trick is, start with heartache. When your heart aches, instead of distracting yourself, sit with it, feel it, be with it, experience it, acknowledge it, accept it, and embrace it for the power that it has to bring you home. Because that far behind your heartache is your stillness. And stillness is as close as you get to getting back to yourself. Heartache is the trigger. But we think heartache is about everything else. But heartache began when we got disconnected from ourselves as children. It's not even trauma. Trauma sometimes made us notice it, but the disconnection happened before the trauma. This disconnection is a natural process of every human being. You come from inside whole, and you go to the outside, and you get disconnected from your wholeness, and then that disconnection leads to discontent, and that discontent then defines how you observe, what you think, what you say, what you do, and what the consequences of that are. And that's how we got into the mess we're in, whether it's you talk about apartheid, or you talk about rape, or you talk about environmental destruction, or you talk about politics or war. I was born in the Second World War, so I experienced it as a kid, right? All of that comes from that single, talk about simple. The disconnection from self led to discontent or heartache. Heartache there are many words for that. We call that feeling in the chest, that uneasy feeling in the chest. We call that by many different names depending on the circumstances that triggered it. When actually all it is a fallback to our own disconnection from ourselves that happened automatically when our senses went out into the world to get to know the world in order to survive.
So focus inside and focus outside.
Yeah. That's the way I think generally focused inside is subjective, focus outside is objective. Science doesn't like to go into subjective. They're always looking at everything from the outside.
Yeah, it says because it's harder to measure.
Well, it's not harder to measure. It's just you can't make somebody else see the same thing you're seeing. You can measure it yourself. Because look, if you have a pain in your knee, you can be objective about the pain in your knee. In fact, the doctor counts on you to be objective because he'll say, why did you come? Oh, I got a pain in my knee. And then he says, well, is it in the front and the back? Is it sharp or dull? If I move your joint, does it hurt more or less? Right? And he depends on your objectivity about your subjective symptoms in order to be able to make a diagnosis.
Oh my God, I just realized something. You somehow have an extra filter that I don't have yet. So up until about 5 minutes ago,
No, maybe I have one. Maybe I have one less filter than you.
Maybe actually you have one less. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Because up until about 5 minutes ago, I looked objective, subjective as two ways. But what you just explained with the doctor is that the doctor depends on you to be aware of your objective experience of the subject.
Of you being objective about your subjective experience, because experience is subjective.
Exactly.
Right?
Experiencing it subjectively.
Yeah. So. But I can describe it objectively.
Thank you.
Right? Because otherwise, if it was true, you couldn't be objective about subjective, then you'd be lying about yourself all the time. And it's like, well, how could you live like that? That's not even possible.
I've seen it.
Huh?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I understand.
I've seen it.
But we have the potential to be able to be objective about subjective.
Undoubtedly so. Yeah. Very much so. But like in my humble own experience, right? Sometimes I wake up and I feel like a child still, literally going, so excited to get up today. And personally, I do not believe that this is the feeling that goes away, because I'm very happy with my life and how I've created it up until now, and everything. I'm still busy. I mean, it wasn't like this. Between you and me, I only really started taking control of my life in 2017. I was a full-blown functioning alcoholic between 2007 and 2017.
Yeah, you know why?
I do know why. Yes.
You didn't want to sit with your heartache.
It was too much. Yes.
So you medicated it, just like they do with drugs, right? So they have their heart aches all the time, and people say don't pay attention to it. I say no, you need to pay attention to it. Yeah. Feel it and see if you can slip behind it, because that's where your wholeness is. Correct. That makes the alcohol or the drugs unnecessary.
But the reason, this is what got me when you said focus inside or focus outside. Because focus outside, external reason, yes, always. But it's the focus inside. That's the real reason. And it changes everything. Certainly for myself, it did. And I see it very, very much as well.
Happiness.
Happiness versus success.
Depends on who you ask.
Always.
See, if you ask Tony Robbins, he has a definition of success. If you ask your culture, it has a definition of success, and it's usually based on fame, fortune, power,
culture, socialization.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? But if you ask life, you're successful because you're breathing. You're successful because your kidneys are making urine. You're successful because your nerves conduct impulses. You're successful because your heart continues to beat when you're asleep. And then you look at it, it's like everything is successful. You were born successful. The moment you stop breathing, your physical success ends. And you don't get to take any of your cultural definitions with you.
Exactly.
Right? So happiness is a state of being according to life. And it's a state of being that is not conditional on anything. So you can literally, if you know how to do that, you can literally go to the place where you feel happy just because it is a state that exists within you. And then there's a happiness that's conditional. I'll be happy when you love me. I'll be happy when I make $1 million. I'll be happy when Donald Trump gets voted out of office. I'll be happy. Just like, and those happinesses are always short lived. Because if you make your happiness depend on your circumstances that are changing, then you're never going to have much happiness. No. I'll be happy when everybody loves me. Well, when's that going to happen? You could become really, really nice. You could be a really, really nice person, like Buddha. Not everybody liked Buddha. Yeah, so Buddha was smart about it. He went for happiness to the place inside where happiness, or contentment or whatever you call it, lives. And he didn't make it conditional on anything. Change in the world will always take your awareness out, because you got to, what's that, friend or foe? Do I run, do I fight, or do I ignore it because it's irrelevant? So anytime something changes, you're automatically drawn to it. And then to balance that, you need to take time to do nothing and bring it back home, bring it back home, bring it back home, because this is automatic and this has to be deliberate. Right? And that the state of happiness exists already within you, and you experience it the moment you bring it in. Same for the state of peace, same with the state of unconditional love. They exist within you, and you experience them the moment you bring your experience out of your head, where all your conditions live, and out of your emotions that are always tied to conditions, and out of your body, which is terminal, into something that exists outside of time, space, and even energy and matter. Right? Light in human form, life in human form, master in human form. Everybody has it in them.
The first time I started thinking about that was triggered by a quote. So I'm looking for the face I had before this world was made.
Oh, that's cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I never heard that.
So yeah, the piece that is from is also called The Face I Had Before This World Was Made.
Okay.
But it was just, oh my goodness. When certain, I believe that the knowledge, the information stays the same. Just with every generation finds new ways of translating it clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer. So we never really figure anything new out at all.
I would agree with that. Yeah. We've made more sense, like in places where we were superstitious because we didn't know how something worked. We've learned how it works and gotten a little more settled. In that sense, science has been very helpful. Observation actually is what science is based on. But everything is based on observation, whether it's observation inside or observation outside. Outside you get objective, inside you get subjective. It's still all about observation. It's not about the scientific method, it's about observation. If you observe from a quiet place, you get what's going on. If you observe from a noisy place in your head, you miss a lot of what's actually coming at you.
Then you think you get what's going on.
When you
sit inside the noise.
Yeah, no, then you create opinions that are missing information. That's why they're opinions. Because you miss the information that's coming to you by the interference in your own mind.
How long has this process been for you, if I may ask? You're 78 now. I mean, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Right? And it never stops. Comparatively speaking, from my experience, maybe this has taken me so far between 15 to 17 years.
Yeah. And it'll go on as long as you're alive.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's really good fun.
Yeah.
I started when I was 6. Actually, I listened to people argue in Germany because we fled from Poland to Germany, and I listened to adults argue, and it was what they argued about was really trivial. And I thought, man, there must be a way that people can live in harmony, and I'm going to find out how. And that was pretty much been my track all my life. And I mean, I've looked at all kinds of things, and I don't wake up every morning and say like, oh yeah, how can? But it's been in there.
Your guide.
So yeah. That's why I am attracted to certain things, and that's why I stop being attracted to certain things, because if they don't take me in that direction, I get tired of them very quickly. Want and need. Well, most of what we say we need, we actually just want.
Okay.
Our needs are pretty simple. We need air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat. I'm even debating whether we need a lot of company. A little bit is okay. Obviously, if you're going to have kids, you're going to need a partner, right? But then, do you need to have kids, or do you want to have kids? Right?
Exactly.
But what we do is when we want something a lot, we call it a need, because that's how we make it seem more powerful and more important than it actually is. What most of us need, I need a car. People live without cars for many thousands of years. Cars and houses and money and need. No, those are mostly wants. The needs are much more simple and they're natural. And then there's the body needs. And then there's a need to know. Most people don't satisfy that need. But that's a need. The need for peace. The peace is actually a need, because there's something in us that is always looking for it. Of course, in all the wrong places. But we're always looking for a completion or a peace or a wholeness or a now we're okay. So I would call that a need as well. I guess when it's cold, we need something to keep warm. When it's hot, we need something to keep cool to a certain extent. But it doesn't have to be made out of leather and embroidered with dragons. That's a want. Right? Doesn't have to be frills, doesn't have to be a fad. Doesn't have to look good to the neighbors. That's all wants. So what else was there? Clear understanding, influence how people deal with uncertainty. Yeah, well, you'll be a lot less uncertain if you understand that most of what you're uncertain about you don't need. And it doesn't matter whether it comes out this way or comes out that way, because it's really not a need.
That's very evident this year specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of the people that I work with and that reaches out to me, and I'm certain you experience and observe the same. But most people have been circling inside their almost like preventative maintenance measures, like distractions, rather than dealing with the actual underlying problem, whatever that might be. I distract myself by doing this. But because this year, because the lockdown and all of the uncertainty, they're not able to utilize any of those distraction methods anymore. So they're forced to deal with it and to look at it. And it's causing quite some discomforts.
For sure. Yeah, because we're addicted to our wants.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then that shows up. Now we know what we want, but we're still alive. We're still eating. We're still drinking. We're still breathing. So we actually have what we need. We're still sleeping. Sleep's a need too, right?
There's one
But
thing
you can. But yeah, and some people are doing very well with the lockdown. I say to people, hey, if you can't go outside, go inside. Right? And some people are doing that very well, and some people are just like having a really hard time with that. And that's just it's a symptom of the way we live. It's a symptom of, in a way, in the terms of the questions, the wants that we have the wants that we have defined as needs. They're not needs, but we've defined them as needs, and we're addicted to them. Say, "Oh, I have to have my, whatever it is."
Baseline conditioning.
Yeah.
I
So
look at it like you're wearing someone else's coat because you grew up as a child being told that that's the only coat that will fit on you. That coat will keep you warm. That color suits you. And you come at some stage of your life and you realize this doesn't even suit me. You take it off and you just put it there and you start looking for what suits me. What do I like?
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's a preference, you know. The want is a preference. It's not a need.
I look at it as a luxury.
It's a luxury for sure. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
A luxury. And in Europe, much more. I mean, I can't tell you how eye-opening it was for me coming from the south to the north, right? And looking at the influence that the Second World War had on Europe.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, spoiled for choice. It is extraordinary. Something as small as, would you like water? What flavor? Do you want bubbles or not? Cold or warm?
Yeah.
None of those
That's
things. Yeah.
clearly that defines someone who's not third world country.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I want my latte with.
Yeah. Now, obviously, yes, very much adapts it and understand it. But
Yeah, and so in uncertainty, there's still some things that are certain. So you live in uncertainty. Everything on the outside is always changing. If you're comfortable with the changes, then you're not uncertain. But if you're not comfortable with the changes and you don't know what's going to happen, it's still change that you're talking about. But something at the same time that you're dealing with changes in the world that is always changing. There's something in you that is stable. And you need to give both their due. You have to deal with the changes, but you also, if you want to have a full life, you also have to acknowledge what in you is not changing, that you can actually rely on. What does letting go mean to you?
this is a big one. I'm curious about this.
Yeah.
Because my personal identification and translation is still changing.
It's what?
Still changing.
Well, letting go is like you have something in your hand and you hang on to it. There's energy put into it, right? You let it go, you open your hand, it goes, whatever it is. If you think of your whole body that way, what do you hold on to? You hold on to your thoughts, let them go. What happens? What would happen if you had no thoughts? Well, at least you know there was a time when you were perfectly fine without thoughts. When you were a baby, right? When you were a fetus. So you can live without thoughts. Let go of the body. What does that mean? Just relax. And one day you're going to leave your body. So you know the body is not the thing to hang on to. So thoughts, body, the outside world, when you're asleep, it goes away. So you know that's not what you need to hang on. So you can let that go. So you let go of the outside world, then you let go of your thoughts, then you let go of your body. And then you can even let go of the energy that you are. And if you let go of everything you can let go of, you will end up in a place of pure awareness. You cannot let go of it because that's what you are. You can only let go of what you're not. On the deepest level, the only thing you can't let go of is awareness, consciousness, the field, God, whatever you call that stuff. It's all the same.
Yeah.
But it's an experience. And you can do, let go exercises of like deliberately letting go of like opening up, relaxing your hands and feet and all of the rest of your body. I do that as a deliberate practice. What if you were dead? Lie down. What would it be like if you were dead?
I still do that exact same thing.
Yeah.
Nights or in the mornings, depending on, I'd lie there and I would sit and I would literally go through. What do I feel if there was no connections that I'm feeling?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. And awareness is the only thing that's there in the deepest place. So everything else you can let go of because everything else one day you will let go of. Doing it voluntarily is nice because then you know if you want to know what it's like to die, the way you do that is by letting go while you're alive of everything you can let go of and ending up in the place in the only thing you can't let go of. That's your ultimate destination. And you can do that just as easily alive as dead, except when you're alive, you do it by choice and you come back. And when you die, it's not a choice and you don't come back. It's the only difference, right? So meditation, like doing a meditation or a self-knowledge practice, is like dying in that sense. And then you become more comfortable with dying because you actually know what the process is.
I'm thinking this keeps getting stuck in my head. Focus inside, focus outside. I'm realizing as we continue, a lot of the things that I can hear that you're telling me you learned through introspection, right? Mindful introspection, which really should be mind empty introspection.
Because mindless.
Exactly. Mindless, even better.
Even though it depends on what you mean by mind, because mind means object to something. Mind means mental, and mind means focus.
Yeah.
Right?
But
so it depends on. That's why I don't like to use that word that much, because it's the definitions of mind are completely contradictory to each other.
Yeah.
Right. I only use mind for the mental stuff. So I don't talk about mindfulness. I talk more about self-knowledge because of that.
I like introspection.
Yeah.
I like that word. My mind is in itself, it's a processing system.
It's a processor. Yeah. The brain is the heart's computer. The brain is life's computer, your life's computer.
And the way I view it myself is like during daytime hours, waking hours, what we do is we just access memories constantly.
Right.
And then the real processing is while we're asleep or during stillness.
A lot of it, yeah. Yeah.
But this inside-outside focus, what you're talking about is, so what I get from what you're saying is you learned through introspection.
I do both. I do both. I did a lot. I mean, I when I was a kid and I was pretty insecure because of the war and everything was confusing. I read a lot of books because books were safe, but I got a pretty good education. And then I ended up in science, then in biological sciences, then in psychology, then in medicine, then back
How
into
does everything work?
biochemistry and genetics. Exactly. I just want to know how everything works. And and then eventually got into self knowledge. So these days I do more introspection. These days, more from inside, from the feeling of life, spontaneously. But I have all the reason I can use the words is because I also understand how the culture thinks about things. Because I studied that too. I actually studied biology because I wanted to know what life is, and because biology means study of life. So I thought we would end up with a jar of life, and it would be liquid and shining. And I pictured the jar half full of like a glass jar, transparent glass jar, liquid and shining. I figured we would get what the essence of life is. And of course, in biology, you don't study life. You study form and function, but you don't study life at all. And if you start with a living frog, by the time you're finished with the experiment, the frog is dead, but you never captured the life. When we talk about energy in the body, or life, like life energy, ATP, we know what the molecule is, and there's supposedly stores energy in bonds, but we never get a handle on that energy. So because it's material science, it's not energy science. So in psychology, which means study of soul, we never studied soul, we studied mind. And in medicine, it was called healthcare. We studied disease, not health. you know. And in theology, we didn't, with the study of God, we never got to see God. Right? So everything that we do is we're actually missing the point. Because the point is the inner education. Why self knowledge is the king of the knowledges. It is the most important knowledge. When you be able to be fully present in all of your existence, in all of your being, that's when everything starts to make sense. That's when you know how to. That's when you start to know how to deal with things and how to respond to situations. If you're not present in all of your being, then half of you is missing in every response. So you're going to have half-assed responses to things. Existence. What does existence mean to you personally? Yeah, I don't think of existence so much, but existence is the package. Here you are. What is you? Who are you as a package? That's existence, because existence is on the level of at least on the level of existence within the natural system, within the social system.
But that's why I put what is the self as the next question.
Right.
Because that's
and again, yeah. No, if you look at it from the mystic's point of view, and a lot of the scriptures, some of the Eastern scriptures especially, were written by mystics based on their experience of what is true to life. And to them, the self was the thing that isn't physical. So a life energy would be self or spirit. Spirit actually means breath, but that's through breath you get energy, because breathing provides the oxygen for combustion that gets you the energy released that you live on. So they thought more in terms of energy, sometimes awareness as the self, but then they would put a big S on the self, and the little self was the body, the ego, the mind, right? So self is yeah, the self is God, the self is life, the self is inspiration or creativity, the self is physical, the self is conflict or stress or survival smarts. The self is member, the self is creature, the self is spec. This depends on where you focus. It always depends on where your focus is. And what, because it's that, in that sense it's complicated. That's why it's important to practice being fully present in all of my being, so that I'm experiencing the peace at the same time as I'm experiencing the world, or the peace as well as the conflict and the crises and the emergencies that come up. If I'm present in both, I always deal better with situations than when I'm only half present.
Bringing us back to pain again, which is exactly why most people are not present in both experiences, because it's much easier.
Well, mostly I think it's because there's no culture that teaches people the importance of the deliberate return to self, to home, right? And I think that what's before us is to make that universal, to make that part of education globally for all sectors of society, not just rulers and
Commonly available.
Ruled, commonly available. Absolutely.
Commonly available. That what you just said there?
What?
That's my wish.
Yeah. 8 billion people could live their lives lit up from within.
All of them. All of us.
The light's there. The light's there. It's a matter of looking into it instead of looking away from it. When people do that,
totally agree.
They will feel so taken care of. They won't steal each other's shit. When they stop stealing each other's shit, they live in harmony. And when we live in harmony, we can easily make sure that everybody's basic needs are met on a global, on a long-term sustainable basis. That's my goal.
Is that actually what you're doing now?
That's the goal of it. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting.
And it's just all it is a matter of reminding people, because it's already there.
You remind them what they forgot.
We're already wired for heaven on earth. We're just not looking at the wiring.
In most cases, we forgot it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, difference between accepting self and being accepted by others. Well, the more important is acceptance of self. It's like being is more important than doing, because you can be without doing, but you can't do without being. So being is the foundation. When I accept myself, I become more independent of whether other people accept me or not, because I'm actually standing in my truth, in what is true for me, in my experience of my being. And then I feel taken care of. And then it's not about me anymore. And then I just look at it and say, okay, where can I help? What needs to be done? How can I make the biggest splash for good that I can do, given I have one human body and one lifetime? And then doing what needs to be done doesn't necessarily make me popular, or makes me popular with some people who will accept me, and not so popular with other people who will not accept me. But that's not so relevant when I'm clear, because I'm not doing it to be liked.
Depends on conditioning.
I'm doing it for life. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. Life is the treasure on the planet, and supporting, encouraging, empowering life, helping people get connected to That's the most important issue on the planet.
We sit around the same fire.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, how old would you see yourself if you forgot your age? You know, I've never acted my age. When I turned 70, I had 2 weeks of confusion, a little bit, because I said, "Oh fuck, I'm old," and that came from a child. When I was a child in Germany, all the people who were 70 or over, either they walked with canes, or they were limping, or they drooled, or their back was humped over, and they were walking, and they were really slow. So it was a memory, and I had that association with 70. And it took me about a couple of weeks to sort it out. To say, I have no aches and pains. I'm not walking with a cane. Mostly, I don't drool. Right? I feel. I actually don't feel like I'm old. I have no aches and pains. So it took me a couple of weeks, and after that, I was like, oh. Right?
This is true, yeah.
So, but just that one time, didn't happen when I was 60, didn't happen when I was 50, but just like 70. Oh my God, I'm old. And I'm not. Something in me is timeless, ageless. More time I spend in that ageless place, the longer I'm going to live too. Because to do the stillness practice and to get to the place where you feel whole doesn't leave the door open for being unwhole. And there's actually research that shows when you do those kinds of practices, you reverse aging. Less stress, no stress. There's no stress in awareness. There's no stress in life energy. There's no stress in inspiration. Right? So.
And combines to all of the disciplines as well: inside living, outside living, health, wellness, food, diet, exercise.
Yeah,
stretching.
and I do some of all of that. You have to give. If you get the book, the book on total sexy health, I go through the 8 parts, and each one is different, has a different function, different nature, needs a different kind of attention, goes off in a different way in response to a different kind of intervention, and you got to give each one of them its due. Yeah, and emotions are a composite of all the other 8. That's why emotions are so complicated, because they borrow from each of the 8 parts. And when you live in line with all 8 parts, then your dominant emotion is, I call it calm presence.
Calm presence.
Calm presence, yeah. Werner Erhard calls it serene passion.
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
Peace.
Yeah. Do I still have the whole? Yeah. When I get disconnected from myself, the whole's still there. But when I get connected, the whole's filled.
What was it? Was it your childhood? Was it the war experience, those memories? What made that hole inside you as an individual?
Oh, I already told you. The hole in your heart begins when you're born, because your awareness goes away from yourself. The hole is just the absence of your presence, of your awareness in your fullness, because there's no hole there other than in terms of not aware. When you're not aware of the peace inside of you, then peace is missing. When peace is missing, you feel there's a hole. But the peace is not missing. The peace is there. It's just that your awareness is somewhere else. If I have $1 million in my left pocket, but I only look for money in my right pocket, I could have $1 million and feel like I have no money. Right? And the same thing.
You have something.
Yeah.
The best way I ever came across that somebody explained silence is not the absence of something. It's the presence of everything.
Yeah, the truth is that when you sit in silence, you will hear a sound. There is a sound in silence. There is a love in your emptiness. There is a light in your darkness, and there's a sweetness in the blandness of your self.
Being, yeah, bitterness of your being.
Yeah, so it's all there. It's the whole thing is an issue of where's your awareness, where is the focus of your awareness. That's the big deal,
Yeah.
because the focus of your awareness creates your reality.
I agree. It's always been like that, yeah. And at the
it's
moment,
always been like that.
Yeah.
What do you think all this is about? You mean being alive and people? Water is interesting, but not that interesting. Oxygen is interesting, but not that interesting. Food or plants or creatures are interesting, but not that interesting. When you put all of that together, minerals, not interesting, but not that interesting. When you put minerals and water and oxygen together into a human being, that's really interesting. So what is the purpose? What is the point of all of this? Is to be fully present in this temporary situation called the human body, that is an unbelievable artwork, four-dimensional artwork of the elements. And what does it feel like to be that? That's the primary purpose. The secondary purpose is when you feel that and you feel good about it, then it's the primary purpose. The secondary purpose is to help other people in whatever way you can to improve the quality of their lives. More joy, less pain.
I will answer you with a smile.
Yes. So, do I think this is it? Well, no, of course. Awareness goes forever. Energy goes forever. Body is terminal. The world is always in changing. Everything on the outside is always changing. Right?
This is, well, it's only constant variance change. But like sometimes when I sit and I am still, or I lie down, or I walk, or whatever it is, majority of my day is in stillness, unless I choose to react or respond to whatever environmental situation. But sometimes I find myself thinking, okay, what is awareness? Or if I did not get my first understanding of awareness based on this body I was in, what is awareness? So if I try to understand, and
awareness has a center in every locus in the universe, like in every human being, but in every blade of grass, in every molecule of oxygen, in every. So awareness is an infinite number of centers with no outside surface. So from each center, awareness goes out to infinity, and infinity doesn't have a border.
Is that how? Okay.
Yeah, right?
I get that.
So infinite centers, no surface.
I get that. I would like to add, because I see that as well.
But the access is in your center. And from there, then you notice it's not that awareness is not limited to your body. Awareness is not stuck in your body. The energy is not stuck in your body either, because you have an energy field. Yeah. But awareness is an infinite energy field, except it's beyond energy. Awareness is beyond energy. It's the container. It's the witness. It notices everything, contains nothing. Everything comes out of it. Everything is sustained by it. Everything goes back into it. But awareness is nothing, no thing, except the container. It has no inside, has no outside. It's a container without inside or outside.
That's exactly what I was. You were just using much better words. Yes.
Yeah.
Because Because if you think about it, without any container, I am the receiver in this container, in this vessel. And if I did not have this vessel, what is awareness then? Yeah, thank you.
No inside, no outside.
Those better words.
So, do I think this is it? No. Yes, this is it, but there's a lot more to this than we think. Okay. In your experience, what is the most important thing in life? The most important thing? Well, the most important thing in life is not a thing. Most important, I think, is full presence. Full presence in all of it. I think that's the most important thing. Okay. And then how do you see yourself, as a sheep or a shepherd? Well, life is the shepherd of my body, the sheep. Right?
Okay.
That's the personal part. And then shepherd or sheep, I don't want to be a healer because people are already whole. So I want to manifest the wholeness, and I hope it rubs off on people. So I don't want to be a shepherd. I'm basically a fellow traveler. But if I have something, there are people who are ahead of me in a way, in terms of their full presence. So I hope something of them rubs off on me. And there are people maybe who are less aware of it. I hope something from me rubs off on them. But we're just fellow travelers. The journey is the same. Same starting point, same destination, same moving parts. So the idea in this paradigm, everybody has everything that everybody else has, but the expressions of it are unique by the uniqueness of our personality.
I quickly want to put something in there. Personal experience.
Yeah.
So I hear you when you talk about your dads. Right? I have really shit experience with my dad growing up. Right? Memories of him throwing my mother across the room to the other side of the wall and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at peace with it. Like I put a lot of work and effort into that, which is one of the ways that I figured out how to make peace with death as well. Because I had to have that conversation. I decided consciously to have the conversation with them, me being in Ireland and then being 15,000 kilometers away, saying, what if it happens one night that I get a conversation, a phone call saying one of you are dead, or vice versa. So we actually said our goodbyes while we are still alive. But what I'm coming to was that the last time I was back home, my dad we sat down and we get on really well now. And he said, Marcel, are you a sheep or a shepherd? How do you see yourself?
Who said?
My father asked me. And I was very much similar down the lines of everything you just said now, And he just smiled at me. And he asked me, he said, how does a sheep know what a shepherd is? And why would a shepherd exist without sheep?
Oh, no. Well, so, yeah, let me interrupt you for a second here. The guy that taught me the practice that I do, one day he said, the thirst of the heart created the master. The thirst of the heart, the ache of the heart created the master. And when he said that, I was like, that's so cool. If there was nobody thirsty, there would be no need for a master. If there was nobody needed a house built, there would be no need for a carpenter. If there was nobody needing to wear any clothes, then there would be no need for a tailor. So in that sense, someone who is mastered mastery of life is called to share his knowledge with people who are hungry for it because they haven't realized it. And what a master like that does, which is the really coolest thing, is he makes it really clear that what is in him is in everybody, and that everybody can have the experience they have if they spend time being present in their life like the master does. When you talk about shepherds and sheep, you're talking about hierarchies. And it's being used, that hierarchy is being used by people to subdue or demean or exploit or torture or
Everything bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you have to be careful that you don't assume that people are born sheep and that people are born shepherds. Even though there are people who know more than other people in certain topics and so can become teachers. But they're not, one is not more valuable than the other. And the masters are clear about that, and the politicians are never clear about it.
Of course.
Right? And when the politicians become clear about it, then the masters will become the politicians. Then we'll have masters as politicians, and they will actually make it work for everybody. Because if it doesn't work for everybody, eventually the people it doesn't work for will make sure that it doesn't work for the people it works for either. That's what happened in South Africa. Right?
Okay.
That's what happens. That's what happens in every revolution.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the revolutions never succeed because they know what they hate, but they don't know what they would replace it with.
What they need.
Yeah. And so I tell people, be really clear what you want this world to be like, because sometime in your lifetime you're going to be able to put that in practice, but you won't be able to put it in practice if you start thinking about it when you need to be putting it into practice. You start thinking about it now in anticipation of the time when that will be super useful, because then you can actually build something that works better.
Yeah.
And we could, and like Mao was a good revolutionary. He was a lousy governor, and the Chinese government is now the same way. These are the old guys from the revolution. They're just as corrupt as the government that they overthrew in 1949. Because they spent a lot of time talking about hate this and strategizing how to put them out of power.
When they got the power, what happened?
And they spent no time figuring out what a fair system would look like.
Yeah. Most cultures have that example. I saw the same thing in Ireland. But South Africa is a beautiful example.
Everywhere, just not every country's had a revolution yet.
Yet, yeah.
They're all heading that way.
I hope as a unit, yes.
Because they're not making it work for everybody.
I hope as a unit.
Even though they want to be voted in by everybody, but then when they get in, they don't actually work for everybody. Yeah, some do pretty good attempt at it.
In New Zealand at the moment, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. The smaller the places, the easier it is.
Mm. This particular question, I would
interrupted you.
Listen, I interrupt you so many times. I take it as a compliment. Thank you. But I would like to explain myself. All right, because all the things you said, I'm aware of that. It's a very loaded question. Because I use it. I don't ask it to everybody. Right? I have asked it to many people before. Most people give me very different answers. Okay. Udo?
Yep.
Okay. The quality is with the gadgets away. I just got a low battery kind of warning on.
Okay. Okay.
So the question, how the person like you, right? One of the answers in the beginning was, it depends who you ask, how they answer it. This is exactly the same, right? Because it tells me, number one, how deep how deep is the individual still inside that system that have been created now since the Industrial Revolution. Secondly, how far have they gone to color in the inside of their box to make it look like beautiful mountains there, beautiful sunshine there. So the answer tells me that. And in my life personally, like when my mind started kind of expanding through awareness was when I realized one thing, that there has to be a dark and a light, a good and a bad. That the one cannot exist without the other one. So shepherd and a sheep, the question says hierarchy purposely to see how does it trigger you. But in reality, I'm asking you, do you realize that the only reason these two exist is because they exist as individuals?
Right. Right. One is shepherd is connected, sheep's disconnected.
Exactly. They're one without the other.
And everybody's on the journey from connection to disconnection to reconnection, hopefully. And then someone who's reconnected can help other people to some extent because it's an individual journey.
Yeah.
You give them a couple of hints that they can find helpful, either in terms of how they think or in terms of what they do or what they practice to get themselves connected and become shepherds. Except if everybody does that, there are no shepherds and there are no sheep except the shepherd life leading the sheep, the body.
This I find this is the general problem today because everybody is looking to be validated by everybody else. So in an effect, majority of everybody is speaking, asking for validation.
Right.
But because everybody is speaking,
so we need to
listening.
So we need to self-validate. Right? It's a leadership, it's also like a leadership model. The leadership model we have doesn't work. Your leader lives inside you. Your leader is life. Everybody has the same leader inside. And if they ask that leader for how to lead their life, then they will get the best answers in their trench that they're in the surroundings they're in. Imagine 8 billion people not running outside to the teacher, the mother, the government. Imagine 8 billion people taking their leadership from the leader inside and then being true to that leader in the circumstances in which they exist. That'd be a very different world. And once again, we're wired for it.
We are.
Yeah. So the leadership model is the leader lives inside of every. How cool is it that the same leader, unconditional love, is in every human being. So you don't have to go anywhere else for that kind of leadership. And then to put that into practice in how you perceive the world and how you live your life and what you create. That's pretty cool.
I often think I am not able to even guess how many times this universal cycle has repeated itself. Right? We don't have the proof or the information. How many times there has been an Earth and that this species got together and evolved up until this stage, or further or less. But what I can know is we're still pretty much adolescents in this version of the experience.
But it will always be the same lessons because we're always going to come out of the Buddha tank and get disconnected.
agree, totally.
It's just, I think that cycle of disconnection might become shorter and more people would complete it, because a lot of people die never having found their way back. Except when you die, you automatically go back home because your awareness disconnects from the world, from the surfaces of things. Then it disconnects from your mind. Then it connects from your body. Then it disconnects from the body. Then it goes into light. Then it disconnects from light, goes back to awareness. So that happens. That's always the cycle. But the best life is when you live conscious of all of that. That's yeah.
This is a holiday. Well, that's how I see it.
4 billion years you exist, and then afterwards 4 billion years you don't exist again. And now you have this. What do you want to do with it? What is the best way to make use of this? No, that's the big perspective. This is my Udo's oil.
Listen, you're such a beautiful example of what it means to be oneself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, you're not so bad yourself. I'm just 38 years ahead of you.
Okay. We're kind of reluctant to say goodbye. But there'll be a next time.
Off the phone.
Listen, thank you.
No, it's good.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy.
Take care.
The rest of your life.
I will.